Greetings viewers, and thanks for joining me out in the shop today. Going to go over a little bit on the 3rd gen, what I've done to fit these 35-inch tires and my impressions on driving this thing with the front locker, auto locker, lunchbox locker, whatever you want to call it, and no selectable lockouts for my hubs. I'll give you my impressions, my tips, and show you what I did. Right, wrong, or indifferent, agree or disagree. I'm not telling you how to do it. I'm showing you what I did, and it worked. And you know I'm cheap, so it didn't cost a lot. So let me get ready, and we'll go over all this. All right, first thing, the 35-inch tires. What I did to fit 35-inch tires. I've got Old Man Emu 2-inch soft springs in the front with Bilstien 5100 struts. They're set on the lowest setting. And I've got 2-inch Old Man Emu soft springs on the front. I got the Bilstien 5100 shocks in the rear. And I've got the 3-inch Old Man Emu soft spring in the rear. This is for rock crawling and off-roading primarily. I wanted the soft springs for that. Armor. I have added almost 500 pounds, if not a little more, in armor on this truck. Back bumper, front bumper, probably a couple hundred pounds a piece, and I know it's at least 60 to 80 pounds on each side of it. So I've added a lot of weight to it. That's why it sets so low. You can see my CVs at ride height, relatively straight. I like that. Still testing out those new HD extended travel, high angle, whatever you want to call them, CVs. I'll keep you posted on my thoughts on those. All right, so that's how it got its stance and how it sets the way it does. These tires are Ironman All Country MT in a 315 75/16. They measure about 34.5 inches at street pressure, ride height, whatever you want to call it there. These were literally the least expensive 35-inch mud tire I could find. You can see a little bit of rubbing where it rubs a little. Woo, that's up close and personal. This part has been beat with a sledgehammer. This part has not. The tire rubs there at full stuff when turning, but that's a smooth surface and that doesn't bother me. What did I take out of here? This is where your pinch weld would be. I came out 2 inches. I came up 2.5. I put a mark there and a mark down here at 2 inches, and I cut that off with a Sawzall. That needs to be filled in. I know that, but I haven't got to it yet. This part back in here, I took a sledgehammer to all of that. That did deform the wheel well. Yeah, in here. So you definitely want to take that off. Get all these things that are going to be in your way, because that stuff is in your way, and move it back. You can see where I've trimmed these panels back so that they fit now. So I have deformed that footwell inwards. I wouldn't say a considerable amount, but more than a little bit. Let me put it that way. The 10-pound sledge is my weapon of choice in that area. So just exercise caution that you don't split a bunch of seams open and that you move anything crucial out of the way, and then realize you're going to have to trim that panel before it goes back in. You can see on the frame there where I get a little bit of rub. It rubs back there at that bottom corner down here just a little bit. But like I say, if it's rubbing on smooth surfaces, that doesn't bother me. See, I'm hitting up here, but again, my suspension is soft. I'm not much higher than stock height. So, the vacuum canister. My fat tires and low sitting on this truck, low stance of the truck, I ripped my vacuum canister off. I had to cut it and remove it completely, but it ripped it off of there so it wouldn't hold vacuum for the 4-wheel drive. You don't need that canister unless you want it to stay in 4-wheel drive when the motor's off, because the vacuum will hold it on. I've just plumbed mine straight into those solenoids there on the fender. The trimming of this outside fender, I just kind of did it to kind of match what I beat back and cut back, but it really doesn't even need to be trimmed back that far because the tire goes past where the end of it was. If I ever go to 37s, I'll have to do something different. Back in here, you can see where I cut this off of the mount, this mount right here. I cut the side of that mount off to give me more tire clearance, and then I just plated it. So you can kind of see what I did there. Yeah, I know that's awful and ugly, and I need to cover it, but yeah, I just haven't got to it yet. This is the wheeling rig. So you see where I rub. Oops, shut the wrong one off. On the front. Passenger side, pretty much exactly the same. I cut it. It's kind of easier to see perhaps over here. It's a little cleaner looking. Second side always looks better. You can see, again, I come back about 2 inches, about 2.5 up, and just cut that off. Massage the rest of that back with a hammer. I hope you can see how that's beat back. Dog making noise behind me. You can see the rubby marks up here. See the rubby marks up there. Now I did have to relocate my washer jug, and by relocate my washer jug I mean eliminate it and never put one back in here because I haven't gotten around to it yet. But your washer jug has to be moved if you're this low with this tire. Now, okay, you can also see here on the ends of the A-arm here where my tire rubs at full droop when turning. The back of the tire barely rubs that. It isn't enough to make any issue with the tire. I mean, you can't even see or tell where it's been rubbing it. These wheels are a 16 by 8 with a 3-inch backspace. So 16 by 8, 3-inch backspace. That's probably pretty important with how this is all working out. And I use no spacer at all. Not even a 1/4-inch spacer, which I could to make that not rub. This is already a different offset than the factory calls for. I won't put any more undue pressure on my front end pieces than necessary. Finally, on the front end, I'll have to say there are no modifications to the front end at all. Stock A-arms, stock bushings, let's see, stock steering rack, stock inner and outer tie rods. So hard parts is stock. Struts and springs, again, Bilstien 5100 with 2-inch soft on the front, 3-inch softs on the rear. Still trying out those CVs. So, okay, nothing else modified on the front. Let's go to the back. All right, on the back. Again, stock lower control arms. I just welded that angle iron to them to give them strength. With wheelin 35s, I have seen those bend. Definitely beefed up everything around those brackets that hold them on because you can rip those off. And the bigger tire and stuff, you go to more stress it puts on everything. So other than the 5100 shocks and the 3-inch springs, 3-inch softs on the back, those are stock bars just modified. Now I do run the stock track bar. I did get the Panhard correction kit and put it on. It raised up this end. The other end, if I put it in the bottom hole, it points it down. If I put it in this hole, it's damn near completely flat, and that's what you want. So I'm in the middle hole on that side, and of course the top on this side. If I add weight, that'll change. Now, back here, I cut this wheel well out all the way around because it had rust. That is exactly the same distance that it is from the bottom of the door out, and I just kept that all the way around on the arc. Back here in the back, at the bottom, I had to take more, and you can see, whoops, sorry, it's just raining off and on outside, and Yeah, I don't want to do this outside. Look at all that mud. Holy cow. But anyway, you can see where I've rubbed here and caught some of that. So that really should have gone back a little further. It just barely misses this. Now that cover that goes over your filler neck, that got lost. And you can see where the tire rubs on those. You can see on the top, that's my bump stop right there, where that tire hits when it goes up and stuffs. And you can see against the back just barely, and that's probably just like mud and crap on the tire that's doing that, but that's clearly where it bump stops. Now, with these 3-inch offset tires or rims, and this 35, 1250, 16 tire, the tire comes right at the edge of all this on the inside without hitting. So I don't know if it would have stuffed without it. I don't think so, because it really gets up in there. I'm going to try and get it out here and flex it up on something so I can show you. But yeah, I trimmed that much out and it still rubs back here at the back. So you may not need to trim your whole fender, but that's what I did. Okay, on the other side, you can see maybe a little bit more rubbing in there. Again, bump stop right up there. I did the same thing with my trimming over here all the way around. You can tell this truck has been beat against a thing or three. I took a bigger bite out of this side and it just barely catches that every now and then. So you can kind of see where my angle changed to take a bigger bite out. This one does rub right here also. You don't have this spot on the other side because of your filler neck, but no rubbing in the front. Very little rubbing or catching on anything that's rough. You can tell by my tires, they catch a little bit, but if you want absolutely no rubbing, you're going to have to trim more than I did. A little bit of rubbing, that just makes sure I know I've reached my flex limit, I guess. It's okay by me. I love this sliders and stuff that I've done. I know I go over that over and over again, but all this armor, beefing this thing up, be sure to check out my whole build on that. It's awesome. I love it. Now I did lose my window. I told you about that. This poor thing. Yeah, this is all caved in up here. That was part of losing the window. She's beat up a little bit, but she's mine. She goes wonderful, and I'm very pleased with it. Now give me a minute to play with the dog, and I'll tell you what my thoughts are on that front lunchbox locker with no selectable hubs. All right, now before I move on, I wanted to thank y'all for putting up with my somewhat slurred speech. If you remember, I punched my tooth out wrenching, and the extensive dental work is underway now. So if I seem like Sylvester the Cat in here sometimes, that's what it sounds like to me anyway. I appreciate you putting up with that. And man, I've been feeling a little puny these last few days. Everybody take care of themselves, all right? Okay. So the first common misconception about the ADD vehicles with the automatic disconnecting differential, people read the keep vehicle speed below 50 miles an hour. I've read that and I misconstrued that to mean driving, but it clearly says to shift from H2 to H4, keep the vehicle speed below 50 miles an hour. That's a bullet point. That means while shifting, not while driving. So I have led you astray on that. Many apologies. And you know, everything I say on my show is fact, except that until now, and it's fact now. For high 4 and low 4, keep below 5 mile an hour, but again, that's just when shifting. So enough about that. Like I said, it's a really common mistake about the ADD front ends. That's the little thing on the right side. Now, one thing about lunchbox lockers, keeping your tire pressure the same on both sides is very important to keep that thing from trying to ratchet and skip while you're driving around. As you can see, this tire right here and this tire right here are at drastically different tire pressures because this is my wheeling rig, and then how it happens, this tire here now tends to go low when setting at trail pressure. If I air them up to street pressure, it's fine. When I leave them at trail pressure, it's not. This tire over here, and sorry for the shitty lighting today, it's really dark and rainy. I'm doing the best I can here. So anyway, keep your tire pressures the same. That is very important. Some may scoff at that, but it will keep it from catching and popping and things like that. Rear lunchbox lockers are fine. They ratchet, they ping, they pop, they make some noises. That's just the things that can happen with it. If you lock your ADD in where you're in full-time four-wheel drive, if you've got your regular differential in there, you can still drive around and it'll differentiate. It's just going to spin your drive shaft. Same thing with the lunchbox locker. So now I'm not confusing anybody with the ADD disengaged. Even though your locker is engaged all the time, you're only spinning your drive shaft. Your left front tire is spinning the locker. The locker is spinning the stub shaft that goes to the ADD, but it's also spinning your drive shaft. Doesn't engage four-wheel drive until you engage your ADD. If you engage your ADD full time, you're locked just like the rear, and you can experience some ratcheting and turning and some popping and cracking every occasionally. If it doesn't unlock easily, like when it's fresh and new, it can jerk a little bit, but once they get wore in, that's really not an issue. I drove mine around on the street with the drive shaft hooked up when my ADD was in permanent four-wheel drive, and I was able to drive around with the drive shaft in. I do get a lot more vibration, okay? So I'm going to say that. I don't know if it's my tires, but at the combination of everything spinning, I do seem to get a bit more vibration. Now here's the issue with the Jshift transfer case. If you've got a multi-mode transfer case that gives you all-wheel drive, you've got a center diff lock. That makes a big difference in your input from your front drive shaft because you've kind of got a differential inside your transfer case that can lock in. So you can run a multi-mode transfer case without the center diff lock is still different from driving a Jshift case around in two-wheel drive, getting reverse feedback from your drive shaft. Now, I hope that all made sense. The all-wheel drive, the multi-mode cases with the push-button four-wheel drive and the center diff lock, you can spin your front drive shaft and differential. It's spinning everything in your T-case like it should. On Jshift vehicles without lockers, that front drive shaft is not spinning when the front wheels are spinning. So by putting the front locker in, you're constantly spinning the drive shaft, which is putting input into your transfer case when you're not in four-wheel drive. So that chain is just in there free spinning, flopping around. I don't see how it's a lubrication issue. Like I said, I've only driven this about 1,000 and some miles with it like this. So I don't know if it's going to cause any problem. Oswald's looking forlorn over there, wanting me to come and play with him. But driving impressions, I would not do it on my everyday driver without selectable hubs because this vehicle has experienced vibrations. I've changed drive shafts. I've tried driving it without the drive shaft. I've had the tires rebalanced, and I've rotated them around. But driving around with the ADD disconnected and the locker in the front, I still experience some vibration in the drive line. So that could be an issue with my vehicle. You may not have that. I'm just telling you what I experienced. So when I had mine locked in because I busted my vacuum canister and I didn't realize I could just jump the hose, so I got in there and tore out the ADD and locked it in place, I still drove around with the drive shaft and both front wheels engaged and the front drive shaft spinning and all, and it just ratcheted like one on the back. So can you do it? Absolutely. Would I do it on a vehicle I wanted to drive on the interstate regularly? Not without a multi-mode transfer case or selectable hubs. So again, that's just me, my opinion, what I think about it, just because I think the input from the drive shaft might be causing a problem, but I think maybe we've gone over that 19 times now. I love the front locker on this. I love the IFS. I plan to leave it. Don't shake your body no at me, dog. I plan to leave this IFS, and I have a homemade long travel plan in mind. That'll be much further down the line. I need to do the thing to replace the window on that side, the little shelf cabinet-y thing, the firewall, and put the fuel cell in, because you've seen how damaged the fuel cell is. You see that list on the windshield. I'm needing to get a few things accomplished on here. That's for certain. Now, wheeling it hard, and I say I wheel it hard. Please watch my wheeling videos. Tell me what you think. I have tested the limits of my factory CVs on 3 occasions. One, I really didn't think I was pushing it that hard, and I broke one. It was a Napa CV, the first one I broke. And it did break in the differential. I'll go over something about that in a minute too. Second thing, I broke one on the driver's side, also in the differential. That's the one I had to tear apart in Hot Springs. There's video on that. Break big on day 1, fix big on day 2. And that both of those took some disassembly of the differential. Now the third one, I broke the the bell on the outside. Now the first one, because I didn't think I was pushing it that hard, it was a Napa CV. Second one was a stock Toyota. I was definitely pushing the limits. And the third one was a stock Toyota one. I also was definitely pushing the limits that day, and I found them. So we'll see how these new heavy-duty ones hold up, because I love wheeling this thing locked. I'm anxious to see how well those CVs hold up, but I'm still carrying spares around. Again, my long travel idea is homemade. I'll just touch on it briefly, but it involves using like Tundra axles that are longer, and just adding to the stock control arms. Now, that's all I'm going to say about that. Here is the T100, which is definitely a bigger version of that little truck over there, my new trail toy. I can also do the same thing with this, because the T100 has a wider frame and bigger CV axles. I can take these parts of these control arms, add them to the control arms on this truck, and use the longer axles and longer steering parts. That rear end out of this truck will also fit over here. So I'm rambling on about other things, as I so often do, but look forward to some business, and that, that E-locker or True Track will also fit this differential here, because T100's Tundras, first-gen Tundras and first-gen Tacomas all use that same 8.4 rear end, but I digress. Okay, so thanks for listening to me ramble on a little bit about this. Just so you know, there is something upcoming on that. That's going to give a lot. Yeah, I was going to just say there will be pieces off of this going on that, but everybody think I was going to do a 3/4 swap, and I didn't want to mislead you. So yeah, suspension swap, homemade long travel. Why can't it work for the 3rd gen? We'll see. I'm sure I can make my own tie rod ends with slim supervision. Dog out here to help me. How can I go wrong? Right, dog? He's like, pet me, not the cat, man. But anyway, thanks for listening to me ramble on today. I really, really do appreciate everybody that tunes in. I hope you find my show enjoyable. I got some new editing tricks coming up. Been able to get a computer now. So yeah, my show's just going to keep getting better. Please like if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more. Check out other issues. I really appreciate you. My whole goal for this show is to help educate and inspire. educate you on how to wrench and inspire you to get out and do fun things with your vehicles. And y'all are helping me to make that happen. And I really do appreciate it. So subscribe if you want to see some more. If I haven't already said that, it is free, easy, and painless. I really appreciate it. Mostly appreciate you hanging out with me. Have a super great day.